Douglas Murray. Well, Douglas, you're safely over there in the United States, so let me start with you before the fun starts here. This stuff reads like a joke, but it's really not funny when you get into the weeds of it. This is limitless self-identity gone bonkers.
Yeah, it's the very stupid results of a very stupid ideology being rolled out by very stupid people. Basically, everything has come unstuck in recent years by the ever-expanding alphabet acronym people, where the fight for gay rights and minority sexual rights turned into this demand, this claim that there was no such thing as biological sex. As Peter Tatchell and others well know, the argument for gay rights was won by saying, we're just like the rest of you. It was also won by saying, you know, we just want to live and let live. Yet the gender ideologues have done something totally different. They've said, you don't have the right to have your own say in this. We are right, and you have to agree with us. They say, we're here, and instead of saying we're here, we're queer, and just get used to it, it's we're here, and as a result, biological reality doesn't exist. Well, clearly, this very, very idiotic ideology is causing havoc. Just today, Piers, there's another tape from a school in Scotland where some poor boy is having to explain to his teacher that there's only two biological sexes and that the gender woo-woo stuff is nonsense. And yet again, it's the student having to educate the teacher because the teacher has been indoctrinated into stupidity due to the gender ideologues.
OK, Ava, you're laughing. Why?
Well, it's just quite amusing, really. I mean, we're talking about children that are 12 and 13. I mean, when I was at school, I had a girl who identified as a horse, but not in this sort of like problematic way that we're now labelling it. She didn't actually think she was a horse. She was just quite strange and walked around and, you know...
But nobody at the school then, no teachers would have tolerated that in the way that this is now having to be tolerated.
No teacher would have tolerated bullying of that child. And that's what this teacher in Sussex has done. They've said it's not acceptable for boys in that class to take the mickey out of someone who's obviously clearly just a child and they're exploring their imagination.
Who says they're a cat?
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry for pausing it, people, but this is the result of when you allow stupidity to erode the schools. Stupidity, as Douglas Murray just said, to get into the schools, to get on social media and accept me as I am. This is the result of what happens when you accept people for who they are, even if the thing that they believe they are is the most stupidest thing ever. These are the results.
But Piers, they're 12.
And he's actually interfering with the lessons by talking in cat language, including meowing, and if people don't go along with this, refusing to cooperate.
Yes.
That is not just having a bit of fun being a cat. That is actually assuming the identity of an animal that this person is not, and then insisting everybody else conform to it. That is madness.
That's not what's happening. What's happening is there's a child who's slightly more imaginative than their peers, and they are acting out this sort of fallacy, and that's fine. But to make it about trans, or this is where it gets dangerous, OK? The Telegraph...
Oh, it's very damaging to trans people. I agree.
Right, OK.
I agree with that.
The reason it's most damaging, the Telegraph have been reporting this, it's up 400% in the last couple of years, them reporting trans issues. I don't understand why they've got this weird obsession with going into
Let me explain why. Let me explain why.
No, it's quite gross.
Let me explain why. When you have in women's sport 6'4" biological males destroying biological females at elite sport level in swimming pools, on racetracks, in other sports, that's when it becomes a full frontal assault on women's rights to fairness and equality. Yeah. And when you include them going into dressing rooms and so on and mixing with biological females, then there's a safety issue. When you have, as we had in Scotland, a male rapist identifying at his trial as a woman to get put into a woman's prison and being sent there by the female boss of Scotland at the time, who's now obviously in her own troubles, that is why this is happening. Kids are watching all this stuff, and as kids do, they want a piece of the action.
No, Piers, don't be ridiculous.
I do not know how these people cannot see how their stupid ideology of the A, B, C, D, E, F, G community has brought about all of this nonsense that's going on. It's so baffling to me that she's trying to say, no, it's just their imagination. The children are more imaginative than the other children. That is just stupidity. And for her to say that it's not happening because of the alphabet community is actually sad. It's clear and plain to see that because of the alphabet community, that is definitely the reason why all this nonsense is going on. Now, grown adults as well, might I remind you and might I tell you, are saying that they're dogs. I've seen this. Grown adults. So it's not just kids and their imagination, which is her excuse. It's grown adults who are going around saying they identify as a dog. And what stops them from saying that? If you guys believe a woman could be a man and a man could be a woman, what's the difference between another human saying, I identify as a dog or a cat?
Ridiculous. There is nothing, there's no similarity between a child wanting to be a cat when they're 12 years old and someone competing in the Olympics.
Oh, there is.
There is
Peter,
no comparison.
Peter, you and I have had a lot of civilised conversations about all this, right? And I want to continue that. I don't think that the trans community gets helped at all by any of this, right? But I don't think it's the media obsessing. I think what you're seeing is, as the trans community get ever more active and populous, if you like, for want of a better phrase, and their activists get more aggressive, when they go to battle on things like women's sport, they're losing everyone and they're piling mockery onto the trans community.
If we can go back to the Telegraph article.
Yeah.
It's quite mischievous. Out of the, I don't know, million or more pupils in our schools, they come up with 5 examples. 5 examples out of a million. Now, that's wrong. I agree it's wrong. But, as Ava says, the kids are just acting out fantasies. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be Robin Hood.
But that's fine. That's fine. But the schools should not be tolerating it.
But the schools are not.
A teacher should not be saying, if you believe that women have vaginas and men have penises, you have to leave the school. That is complete nonsense.
No.
Right?
In this particular case, the Telegraph cited this handful of examples. They were by teachers, individual teachers. They were not school policy. And at least one case, the school disowned the teacher and the policy and said that it wouldn't happen again.
But what about this case in Rye College?
Well, yeah, I'm sure there are some examples of excesses. But on the basis of those exceptions, you can't make a generalised attack upon the school system and suggest that all our kids are being propagandised in this way, because it's simply not
But when you hear
happening.
that teacher, I think, to bring Douglas back in, when you hear that teacher, there's clear evidence of what we've all been fearing has been going on, which is a teacher caught on tape literally spewing nonsensical gender ideology propaganda.
But one teacher.
Yes,
only one teacher.
One teacher,
tens of thousands.
Well, hang on, one teacher caught on tape. Right, there have been many other instances of this being reported, but no one's actually had it on tape. It's a bit like, I would liken it to the Partygate scandal, when we finally got a video of the people having what was clearly a party. There have been lots of rumours about it. So now we have a teacher clearly on tape doing this stuff.
But it's not official school policy.
If I may,
schools across the country
well, she's still, to my knowledge, she is still working at that school. Douglas.
If I may, first of all, Ava rather unfortunately misspoke earlier when she said that the schoolgirl in question was acting out a fallacy. I think you meant a fantasy. But actually, she is acting out a fallacy.
Thanks ever so
fallacy.
much. But do you know what I find fascinating?
You're right with fallacy.
Do you know what's fascinating about Douglas?
Has been propagated. A fallacy which has been propagated by gender ideologues and is doing profound damage to gay people, among others, in our society, as well as women.
Like
and let me explain very
explain
very quickly why. I can't quite hear you, but I can hear you muttering something. Let me quickly explain why. A poll that just got published in the United States showed that among the general population, support for gay marriage has been starting to decline in the last year. Why is that? It's because the arguments that actually brought about liberal rights for all minorities in the last few decades have started to get turned on their head and turned against people. What is the source of that? It is the gender ideology movement. What is the tripwire for the general public? It is children. It is people learning that their children are being taught nonsensical things. It is being seen by the wider public, most of whom are heterosexual and don't need to identify as cis or anything else. It is being seen from that vantage point as the LGBTQIA+ movement losing control of itself. And so a backlash is starting. And the backlash is coming because people are lying to children and are using children for medical experiments. There's nothing funny about that. There's nothing that should cause levity in that. It should be treated by adults seriously.
OK, Ava?
So, Douglas, it's really important, actually, all of that point that you've just brought up. It's very on brand for you because, you know, you like to stoke fear. You've actually made a career out of it. I'll take you back to your book, The Strange Death of Europe, and you made a big fright. You know, you frightened the entire public about your thoughts on Europe, and we ended up in Brexit. You weren't the sole contributor to that, but you were a big voice.
Can we stick on to the
I will. And then, you know, now we're talking about LGBTQ.
If I may say so
and you're
very
creating...
quickly,
Hang on, you spoke. I'm speaking.
No,
I'm speaking.
I'll
you spoke.
reply.
This is, I mean...
And I'll reply.
Hello. I haven't
let
finished.
Ava speak, please,
Now,
Douglas.
back on the trans issue, when you're talking about LGBTQ, what you've just done there is basically say that the whole of America, who have historically had a problem with gay marriage, are now turning on it because a couple of children in a classroom in Sussex want to be a cat. If you can't see the ridiculousness in that argument, I can't help you.
The bigger issue is there is no such thing as gender ideology. We all have gender identities. You identify as a man, and I fully respect you.
Well, no, hang on. I don't identify as a man. I was born a biological male.
Yes.
That's where this whole thing goes rogue. I'll bring you back in, Douglas, in one say. That's where the whole debate goes rogue. You were born a biological male. You were born a biological female. Douglas, biological male. This is just a fact, right?
No.
It's amazing to me that they're forcing this ideology down our throats. He's saying we all have a gender ideology and you identify as a man. Who told you that, Pierre? Did Pierre tell you he identifies as a man? Who told you that? What a lie, and it's sad. No one told you that. He just is a man. He doesn't identify as a man. He is. He doesn't have to identify as one. And the fact that you even say he identifies as one without even telling you he identifies as one already begs the question, and it's very interesting that you tell him he identifies as a man when he never told you that.
Once you start saying there are hundreds of genders and you can identify as anything you want, you're going to end up with kids at school going, I'm a horse, and you've got to treat me like a horse.
Piers, you're confusing two things.
No, I'm not.
Sex and gender.
I'm not. I accept they are being conflated.
Biological sex is one thing which I totally accept, and so do 99% of the people in the LGBT plus community. Gender is something different. Gender identity is how you see yourself.
And do you believe it's limitless?
No, I don't believe it's limitless.
What's the limit?
Well, there is basically male and female and intersex, but there are people who have different gender identities.
No, but how many genders are there?
Well, there is no fixed number.
So what's the limit?
I don't see a particular limit.
There's no limit. So when you said said there is a limit. Now you admit there's no limit.
Sorry.
Well,
there is male and female
is
identity.
There a limit or not
There's
to the number of genders?
Identity.
No, that's sex. But on gender, is there a limit to the number of genders?
Well, there are some people who are asexual. That's an identity.
No, there are some the BBC has put in education videos. There are 100+ genders.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
So what is the limit? What's the number?
Well, I'm not going to specify a particular number, but it's very small.
But where do you draw the line?
Well, I draw the line based on science and evidence. And we know that there is a thing called intersex, where people are born with a mixture of both
that is
male,
literally what it says on. That's what it says on the
female.
tin. That is intersex.
Yeah.
People are born with chromosomes from both, right? That is a medical condition. Yeah. That's inarguable, right? We're talking about gender.
But trans identity is also a biological fact.
I know, but once
rooted in brain structures and processes.
I understand it, but once
as the new science shows.
But once you get into 100 genders, people can
we're not debating 100 genders.
Well, actually, the BBC has taught kids that. This is back to Douglas's point about affecting the brains of impressionable young kids.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the BBC if they're saying 100+ genders.
OK, Douglas.
Very quickly, I don't know, Ava, anything about your career. I don't know if you have one. But you did try to imply that you knew something about mine, and you just showed you know nothing about it, because actually my 2017 bestseller, The Strange Death of Europe, was not about the EU. So you should learn at some point to read more than the title of the book before commenting upon it.
It was about migration.
Let me very quickly...
And how rude are you? How rude are you?
Very quickly,
you built a career out of fear-mongering, and you're now importing those evangelical American ideas onto UK television.
You haven't even built a career, have you? You haven't
What are
even
you
built a
talking
career.
about? I'm on
So
the
let me
same panel
finish
as
for a
you, Hun, and we're
second.
getting the same...
Do you know what? I'm going to wrap it up by saying you've both got wonderful careers, or you wouldn't be on Piers Morgan Uncensored.
Damn is all I have to say. And yeah, this ideology that's being pushed upon children in schools is definitely going to affect them. And yeah, what happens when they grow older and they start saying, yeah, I identify as a horse, or I identify as a cat, or I identify as a dog? Why are you going to tell them you can't identify as that? Well, that's how they want to identify. They feel like they're a dog. They're a dog, right? But anyway, that was another video, another reaction. As I usually say, if you guys enjoyed the video, like the video as much as possible. Comment down below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at YinkaThatGuy. And I am out.